In 2013, director JJ Abrams dropped a short trailer for a mysterious new project and set the internet on fire.
He arrived knowing nothing of himself. Who is he? Soon he will know. Men are erased and reborn.
Pretty intense, yeah? But what was this new movie? With only the title of Stranger to go off, no one was quite sure. Some speculated that Abrams had secretly been producing a spin-off of his hit TV series Lost, or a sequel to his movie Super 8, Cloverfield, or perhaps a totally separate, possibly Cthulhu horror franchise. The world waited with bated breath, and a few months later, the truth was finally revealed. Abrams' captivating new creation was a book, co-written with author Doug Dorst. It's called S, and it's crazy. So viewers of this channel will know that I am a fan of experimental fiction, that is, books that play around with format and structure to present stories in unconventional ways. And the moment I broke the seal on S and removed it from its slipcase, I knew I was in for a treat, because the book presents itself as a 1949 novel called Ship of Theseus, written by a reclusive revolutionary, V.M. Straka, an author whose real identity has remained shrouded in mystery, and who supposedly died under mysterious circumstances shortly before the book's publication. It's designed to look like an old library copy of the title, which has been routinely checked out from the year 1957 to 2000 until it gets stolen by a 15-year-old dude named Eric Hush, who became so enamored with the secrecy surrounding the author that he decided to spend his life in academic research to find the truth behind the book. One day, grown-up Eric accidentally leaves this book behind at a college library, where it then gets picked up by a girl named Jen. Jen writes a note to him on one of the pages, and Eric playfully writes back, beginning a kind of pen-pal relationship as the two trade the book back and forth, talking to each other through the margins, but stubbornly refusing to actually meet. Before long, the two are knee-deep into an investigation of V.M. Straka, and they discover that the rabbit hole goes way deeper than they could have possibly imagined. If you're a fan of aesthetic, then S will be right up your alley. Great pains have been taken to make sure that the book honors its premise. Pages are yellowed, scuffed up, ink is smudged throughout to immerse readers in the concept. The only thing really missing is that old book smell. Reading S is quite the trip. It's a story built on layers. So at the base level, you have the actual text of V.M. Straka's Ship of Theseus, which tells the story of an amnesiac who stumbles into a mind-bending adventure of political upheaval. It is a sometimes frustrating read, full of seeming stream of consciousness, poetic symbolism, ambiguity, and it ends with this jarring anti-climax that, in the eyes of the fictional readership, left the world with more questions than answers. But the next layer gives you a bit of insight into why. The book's translator, F.X. Caldera, reveals they were working from an incomplete manuscript. On the day that Straka was set to finally meet FX and hand over a draft of the book's final chapter, FX walked into the writer's hotel room to discover a struggle of some type had occurred, and Straka's body was being whisked away by the police. The last chapter's manuscript lay scattered on the floor, with many pages being picked up by the breeze and flying out an open window. In a rush, the translator scrambled to recover as much of the original manuscript as possible, but in the end was forced to take creative liberties with the book's ending. As a result, FX has filled Ship of Theseus with various footnotes to clarify parts of the book that remain ambiguous, and also to discuss and debate the author's true identity, because the thing is, FX never actually met V.M. Straka face to face. Straka was likely a pseudonym employed by a certain political revolutionary through the years to aid in the overthrow of various corrupt capitalist enterprises. Who that revolutionary actually was, no one seems quite sure, but a trail of blood seems to follow V.M. Straka and his 19 different novels everywhere he went. The third layer of the story is the handwritten notes of 15-year-old Eric, who steals Ship of Theseus from his high school library and becomes obsessed with the book's political message, penciling in his 15-year-old commentary on the parts that he finds the most appealing. Layer number 4 is the handwritten correspondence between Jen and Eric years later, as they not only become deeply involved in each other's personal lives, but also set about trying to solve the mystery of who VM Straka actually was. Oh, and by the way, their story, it has its own commentary too, because Jen and Eric go back through the book later on in their relationship to correct, amend, and develop their own margin notes. They do this 3 different times. And on top of all that, sandwiched between the book's pages are various supplemental documents like postcards, newspaper clippings, maps, letters, and a fancy decoder ring to help you delve into the mystery even further. S is, in a real sense, a story within a story within a story within a story within a story. And if you miss any of the layers of this onion, you will likely be totally lost. Depending on the type of reader that you are, this either sounds like it will be the coolest reading experience ever, or pointlessly convoluted and frustrating. I personally enjoyed it as a nice break from convention. However, I definitely picked up some tips to make the experience a bit more coherent for first-time readers. First, do yourself a favor, split the book up. When I started reading the first chapter of the book, I just barreled into chapter 1, reading all of these different layers all at once, thinking that I'd be able to just sort out all of the various story threads mentally. This was a bad idea. Much of S is just considering the base text of Ship of Theseus, but in various different contexts. The margin notes tell their own stories, and they do so at different passes. So if you read the notes from month 2 of Jen and Eric's relationship without having first read month 1, you will be struggling to make sense of their ongoing conversations. To be clear, it's still doable, but I did not find the experience to be particularly enjoyable, especially because it tends to spoil huge story reveals, lessening the narrative impact when they finally happen. So for a more coherent and chronological experience, just take it 1 layer at a time. Start with the Straka text, which, if you're so inclined, is also available in audiobook form. Then, once you've got that basic story down, go back and read the story again, but with the translator's footnotes and young Eric's pencilings. This slowly opens you up to the mysteries surrounding the author and the general universe that the rest of S takes place in. Then go back again with the margin notes, this time starting with Jen and Eric's first pass of the book, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, and along the way consider the document inserts as they are mentioned. If you're reading carefully, you should be able to figure out in a line or two whether a margin note should be read on your current pass through or come later on in the story. Having said that, don't get too torn up if you happen to read something out of order. It is bound to happen in a book like this. It's honestly not that big of a deal. There are also several puzzles along the way, some of which S doesn't even tell you about, and online communities have worked for years since this book's release to try and figure them all out. If you really dive into it, you might just discover the existence of, let's just say, additional story materials online. Be aware that this story has a ton of ambiguity. As Jen and Eric pencil in their notes, sometimes they will reference events or key conversations that take place outside of the book's pages, and you have to use the limited hints offered in their writing to try and piece together what actually happened, which is, ironically, what they're trying to do with the Ship of Theseus. Another helpful hint, don't be afraid to Google things. Both the Ship of Theseus and its margins reference tons of events and terminology that some modern-day readers might not be all that familiar with. There's no need to leave yourself in the dark about these subjects. They might come into play later or help you better understand a particular situation. Sometimes movies get referenced. If you've got time, you should check these movies out, or at least read up on them. It will add another dimension to the story if, say, a character lets slip that they watched a particular movie the night before, and then you get to go check that movie out for yourself. It helps put you into their headspace and might help clarify why they choose to write a particular message. Finally, don't be afraid to take your time with the book. Read a chapter, then take a break. Chew on it for a bit, think about it, then come back to the story. There is no need to rush through it. Enjoy the ride. As with most of Abrams' stories, remember, it's about the journey, not the destination, because S is, at its heart, a book about scholarship, research, and the difficulties of piecing the past back together. If anything, it is an exercise in the importance of contextualization and how it affects the stories that we read. For sure, it was not what most of us were expecting from a mysterious, spooky trailer, but for some, it ended up being even better. Special thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. If you've got a creation or business that you want to share with the world, they help make it easy. Start by choosing from one of their stunning customizable templates, and then use their new Fluid engine to customize it to your specific needs. You can use their member areas feature to host exclusive video content for your online community, and if you've got something to sell, their online storefront gets you set up in no time. You can check it out today with a free trial from squarespace.com. Give it a shot. If you like the experience, then when you're ready to launch your site in full, head over to squarespace.com/AustinMcConnell to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain.